Welcome to Navigating Life After 40, the podcast that's all about helping women navigate this exciting and sometimes challenging phase of life. I'm your host, Roni Jai, and I'll be here sharing some of my own personal experiences, chatting with experts and a few friends, and also providing some practical advice and support to help you live your best life after 40. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Navigating Life After 40. I am your host, Roni Jai, and I am here today with a special guest, and I will hop in and share more about her in a few minutes. But before I hop in, I always, everybody's always asking me about my glasses. So where did you get these glasses from? This is a pair that I did not get from the usual place that I share, which is Zulu. I got these from Vogue Glam, and so I will post that in the show notes so that you all can have access to that link and shop and get you a pair. There's not a special code for this one, so don't have that particular relationship with them, but I do with Zulu, so you guys know I'm always in a different pair of glasses. Almost every episode, and I do have one pair that I really love, so I get a lot of good feedback on that. All right, so today we're going to talk about a very important topic that a lot of women are going through during midlife. And for many, they often think that it has to do with the more common symptoms such as hot flashes and night sweats. But did you know that perimenopause goes beyond just these traditional symptoms? There are also things such as anxiety, heavier periods, frozen shoulder, and that's just to name a few because it's so many symptoms, and it's also different for everyone. And so today I have the pleasure of chatting with Carin Luna-Ostaseski. She is here with me, and we're going to talk about her journey during perimenopause, and we're going to just have a great conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Carin.
Thank you so much, Roni. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. All right. So, Carin is the creator of Hot or Just Me. When I first got this email, I said, that's so interesting. I'm curious. And I went and I clicked and I read it and I read all of the information that you sent to me. I said, okay, I want to talk to her. I really got to talk to her. She's dedicated her time to providing solutions for women navigating menopause and perimenopause. And so today we're going to talk to her about her unique journey and what led her to create this amazing community for women to receive the support that they need. All right, so kick things off. I usually start with an icebreaker. Typically, I didn't start with one today. I was like, I didn't think of one. Usually I start with that so we can get to know you. But if one pops up, I will... we'll throw that in there somewhere. But I did have an opportunity to read your article in Time magazine, and it talked about when you first noticed the changes with your cycle becoming heavy, and also you experienced a panic attack on an airplane. Oh my God. When I was reading it, I was just having this visualization in my mind in terms of what that could have looked like for you. How did you feel in that moment? And yeah, I just was like, I hope she's okay. I mean, I know you're okay now. But I was like, I just hope, because you're on a plane and the first thing people do if they're looking and they're watching is they're freaking out and they might think you're about to do something with all of the crazy stories that we've been seeing lately. And so can you share more about what you noticed on this journey, and also, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So, I guess I'll zoom back a little bit. Thank you so much for that intro. I would say that my hot flashes started somewhere in my early 40s, and it was just a really simple question that I asked myself and everyone around me: is it hot or is it just me? And more often than not, it was just me. And I realized that I was also deep into perimenopause, so had a lot of other symptoms that followed, which ones you mentioned as well. The hot flashes, the brain fog, the anxiety, the changes in the period, hair loss, all kinds of fun stuff. And so my doctors really weren't that much help, which we can go into later. And I realized I just needed to kind of, surround myself with the right tools, products, and services to help me navigate. And that's how the company took off. But to answer your other question, yeah, about those specific instances, the heavy periods started where I was just kind of Googling, like, why am I bleeding so much during my periods? Or, I was having these, what I call mini monsoons every month, where it was about the same amount of blood, but just shorter amounts of days. So I thought, like, what is happening? And it's funny because I would never think to Google, what is perimenopause, or am I in perimenopause? You just start with these symptoms, right? And then the brain fog was another fun one that was in Time magazine, where, I've walked into rooms before and I've forgotten why I was there. Like, oh, what did I come in here for? And it's a little bit different when you're actually driving a car and wondering, where am I headed? And so that happened to me, which was, again, a little bit like scary at that time of thinking, like, a minute into the drive, I just kept driving straight and then realized, oh yeah, I'm on my way to the car wash. And then the anxiety one, I'd never really faced anxiety in my life. It wasn't like something common. I've never had that kind of, issue before. And I found myself on an airplane and I was tired because I hadn't slept the night before. I had caffeine, so I had an extra cup of coffee and all these things in hindsight that I'm putting together, like, oh, this is what triggered it, but I didn't know in the moment. I was dehydrated. And then I started watching a show called Beef, which is fantastic. And there's this episode where there's like flashing red lights and sound. And all of a sudden, I just felt myself, like, my heart was like starting to kind of beat really fast. And I thought, oh my God, am I having a heart attack? Like, just totally, totally scared. And I'm like looking around, I'm all by myself. I'm like, texting my husband over the phone, like, hey, I'm really scared. I think I'm having a heart attack. And he's like, what are you feeling? Which is kind of like walked me off the cliff a little bit. And I went back to the flight attendant and she said, I said, I think I might be having like a heart issue. And she said, are you afraid of flying? And I thought, God, no. And I'm actually a licensed pilot. So I'm like, flying is really fun for me. It's not scary at all. And so, but then she's like, are you having a medical emergency? And that word kind of scared me. I was like, am I? And I just didn't really understand why, like, it was happening. So I just like deep breathing. I had some orange juice, kind of chilled out. And then later on, I started looking up, like, again, the symptoms like Dr. Google, right? And then come to realize that anxiety is a really common symptom for perimenopause. And so just kind of started to learn how to just regulate my emotions and remove these triggers, but also just kind of not put myself in situations, where I'm having too much caffeine or I'm dehydrated or, just learning what my triggers are.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. As you were talking, it made me think about my experience. I often share my journey in terms of, some of the symptoms I went through. And that was one for me. That brain fog was really bad. And like you, I remember being in meetings and I would be mid-sentence and I would go totally blank. And it made me have, I know imposter syndrome is the popular term right now, but I really did feel like I was an imposter in these rooms. And I struggled with, I know I deserve to be here, but I feel really stupid right now because I can't formulate a sentence or a mid-sentence and it just goes out of the window. And I didn't know that this is what I was going through. And I also was dealing with anxiety, and I've never dealt with anxiety before in my life. And I would go to the doctors, and I cannot wait to hear your take on doctors, because I have my own stories with them, just really not understanding. And I remember going and the doctor did an EKG on me. He was like, why is your heart being so fast? And I was like, I don't know, you're the doctor, you tell me. And so, but I didn't know what was going on. And so like you, I went to Google to try to diagnose myself, and I eventually talked to an OBGYN and she told me what I was going through, but she really couldn't help me. She really didn't want to give HRT and all of those things. And so leading up to this, that is one of the challenges that a lot of women face that we deal with. We talk to the doctors, we try to get this help, and they're not really helping us. So how was your experience going through this and then trying to talk to these doctors and trying to get the help that you needed? How was that?
We have a really similar journey. So I think, similar, you go to the doctor and like, oh, I'm having these mood issues. They're like, oh, well, you need antidepressants or SSRIs. And it's like,
Yes.
wait. And then it's like, oh, I'm having trouble sleeping. They're like, you need these like heavy duty sleep aids. And it's like, whoa, this is like a sledgehammer to like a housefly. Like we need to just like take a more holistic step back approach. And, the bigger question was they should have been asking is, are you feeling these other symptoms of perimenopause? But what I'm realizing as I've gone through this journey is that most doctors in the United States only have 3 hours of training in menopause. And so what we find is, if you have, say, a male doctor, they might not even know much or care. If you have a female doctor, maybe they've spent most of their practice focused on delivering babies as an OBGYN, and maybe they retired by the time that they get to menopause. So there's not as much of an interest. So there's very few practitioners that are, let's say, even certified through menopause.org to be educated around perimenopause and menopause. So the good news is if you go to menopause.org, there is a directory of about 2,500 physicians there that have gone through extra training and certification. But just trying to find the right doctor is really important, and to kind of push back for your own health and wellness, to just be an advocate for yourself. And then, in some ways, it's almost like a little bit of girlfriend medicine, I call it, right? Like you ask your girlfriends, like, hey, is this normal? Is this happening to you? Or what are you using? Or who have you seen? And then start to kind of surround yourself with tools and resources, maybe symptoms-based, or if it is time for hormone replacement therapy, to find the right doctor and the right type of hormone for yourself, which is, again, a little bit of a guessing game sometimes, like a trial and error for a while.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned just that website, because I'll be honest with you, even I didn't know that that site existed until just now. So I'm looking around for a pen. So where's my paper so I can write it down? And it's over here. But I didn't know that, but I will definitely make sure I drop that down below so that women will be able to go to that site and find a doctor who can be really supportive of them during this time. Because I'm in a lot of groups, especially on Facebook. They have all of these menopause groups, and everyone has the same story. They're just not getting the help that they need. And as you mentioned, they want to rush to the antidepressant, which is what my OBGYN did. I'll put you on a low dose. And I was like, but I'm not depressed. I don't have this.
Yeah.
And, I did do my research. I love to do research. And I did find that a low dose does help. But I was like, I don't want to take this. This isn't, I didn't feel like this was going to solve.
You start reading the side effects and you start wondering, like, do I want to get into all of that too?
Yes. And I know it was another flag for me, because I, as someone who used to be a mental health therapist years ago, when I first heard it, I was like, okay, now I know what this medicine is for. I don't want to take this. I work with people who took this medicine, and I know some of the side effects of it. But I went and I just was like, okay, let me just do some research. But I'm curious to know, like, how the experiences that you went through and the research that you found it, how did that help you to shape your understanding of what women are going through and to help push you into moving towards starting hot, or is it just me?
Let's take a moment to thank our partner, Black Girl Vitamins. They provide wellness products specifically designed for women of color, including their amazing menopause support vitamins. One of my favorites, MenoChill, is specifically designed to support menopause and perimenopause symptoms. Visit www.blackgirlvitamins.com and use my code NAVIGATE to save 20% off your first purchase.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway in all of this was that I wasn't alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
That this wasn't just me and my own like crazy mind of, what's happening to my body and my brain. And so just kind of realizing that it is quite common, and just really trying to figure out how can I help to take the stigma away from menopause, this taboo that we have that, that women face. We have this a lot of societal pressures for looking young and staying young, and that we might have this like loss of vitality and that we should be hiding our symptoms, or, just the feelings of being judged about your attractiveness or your productivity or your social relevance. So there's just so much to unpack there. And I thought, I think it's not unlike me to put myself in rooms where I don't belong, right?
Yeah.
I'm a woman of color. I started a Scotch whiskey brand that's very much a white man dominated industry. So I'm not afraid that like, hey, I'm not a medical professional, but I don't claim to be. And so I always tell people consult your doctor before, any medical changes or any health changes that you make. But for the most part, that I have become quite an expert when it comes to, products and tools and services to help women through their symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats, irregular periods, insomnia, which is a big one, any kind of like mood changes, irritability, brain fog, vaginal dryness, and your decreased libido. There's just so much that happens during this time, and just to kind of normalize it. So yeah, I started hotorjustme.com a little over 3 months ago, and we're off to the races. It's really wonderful to see women being supported and what they're ordering and their feedback on some of the products and services that we offer. And then just basically we'll be launching a library that also has about 150 articles of research and resources and support and advice as well.
Nice.
And I'm happy to give your listeners as well a discount. I know you do that with your glasses. So any of your shoppers could use Navigating Life After 40 as their discount code, or they can just use podcast as the discount code.
Nice. I love it. Thank you so much for that discount. And I will also drop that in the show notes as well. I had a chance to go to your site when I was doing my research, and I said, man, this is amazing. And you have just a combination of everything on there. And there's this one cooling ring that goes on with this. And
I'm wearing it right now.
And I said, I got to get one of those. I'm planning on getting one of those because I need it. I often just have these weird moments when I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, I'm hot. And everybody else around me.
Yeah, no,
it's like,
are real.
Yeah, they're real.
The items right now. So this is a tank top from Becoming. It's an anti-wake moisture, pulls the moisture out when you're having a hot flash and kind of brings it back into a cooler temperature. And then this is a bracelet. It's the Chicklet bracelet from Hot Girls Pearls. And you put it in your freezer and it cools down, and it's also really stylish. So I think it's just a fun tool to help navigate these hot flashes that kind of, they pop up out of nowhere sometimes.
And can you wear that bracelet all day, or do you have to take it off and put it back in the freezer?
You should definitely like recharge it. It'll last a few hours for sure.
I love that. I'm definitely going to check that out. And and thank you again for creating that space in that community, and also having the products that women can actually use, and that will be helpful, because that's one of the things everybody's like, what can I take? What can I take? And so I know recently I did something where I was promoting some of my favorite supplements to take, because my doctor doesn't really give me the other stuff. So I was like, these are my favorite supplements. And so I was able to find some things that work for me, and even help me along my day to even, think better and really help with that brain fog. I know I'm always a proponent for lion's mane. It's one of those things I'm always really making sure that I'm consuming, especially before podcasts or big meetings, so that I'm not in the middle of a meeting and I have one of those brain fog moments. So that has been so, so helpful for me. But I'd love to kind of take a step back for a minute, because I think I jumped ahead, but I want to take a step back for a minute, because you mentioned something that stood out to me, and something that I really did want to touch on today, about how do we normalize these conversations around menopause. It seems like so many people have just kind of pushed it off like it's not really important, and they don't really take women serious. Of course, we're now seeing more doctors talk about it and getting the training that they need to help women. But how can we normalize these conversations around women going through menopause?
Yeah. So I have, I guess, three things that come to mind when you say that. The first one is just the sheer number, right? Like there
Mm-hmm.
will be 1 billion, that's B, 1 billion with the B, women in
Mm-hmm.
menopausal stage of their life this year. And so realizing that this is something that is prevalent, and it's also something that we as a society are starting to talk about more. As a child, I don't remember my mom ever mentioning perimenopause or menopause. It just wasn't a thing, right? Like there were times where I remember her having hot flashes, but that was
Yeah.
pretty much the extent of it. So I think that that's really common. And then also as we're aging in the workplace, I think that menopause in the workplace needs to be a topic that needs to be brought to the forefront and is starting to be trending for sure as well. So just how do we support our women in the workplace, right? Is it being able to control your own temperatures? Is it different kinds of outfits that you might be wearing if you have a uniform type job? Is it being able to take mental breaks when you need to, or just, being able to just walk into the room when you have to just take care of yourself without any kind of repercussions or stigmas around that? And so I think that that's definitely a topic that is going to be more front of mind, and as we normalize perimenopause and menopause. And then something that I talk quite a lot about with more and more lately is something called andropause. So for men, they have their own version of menopause, which is called andropause. As we lose some of our hormones or decrease over time, men are losing testosterone over time. And so their symptoms are quite kind of similar, or they'll have some elements of brain fog, anxiety, mood swings. They'll have hair loss. They'll have like the middle, like weight gain in their belly and abdomen area. And just sort of start to realize that this is something that's happening to all of us, right? In different ways and stages. And this is something that we can open up the dialogue of communication with our partners. Like, hey, this is what's happening to me. And, I'm noticing you're having similar issues as well. And this is where there's an overlap in what's happening to us. There's a high instance of divorce rates around this age as well, or we'll call it like menopause rage, right? There's, you've got mood swings and anxiety coupled with changes in your sexual desire and libido, and men have issues with sexual dysfunction around this time as well. So it's just a really common theme that we're just not coming together as sexes to talk about. So I think that that's something else that we can do to normalize the conversation.
I like that you brought that up too, because we do leave men out. I think the only time we're really upset with men is when we see the first 3 letters of menopause. We say menopause, men administration, men is at the forefront of it, and so we get mad at men like, why did y'all do this? But I do like that you mentioned what they also go through as well. I don't think that we have enough conversations with men. I don't think enough people are educated on that as well, to let men know, like, hey, you go through these changes too. And instead, what a lot of us think, especially once we get to this stage of life is, oh, he's changing or she's changing, or maybe it's a midlife crisis or something like that. And it could be that your body is just changing. You're going through what I like to just call the pause, because it will pause you. Like it will stop you in your tracks a little bit. And so I don't think that there's enough education out there even for men. So I like that you mentioned that. Now you have my wheels turning.
Funny, my daughter is 9 years old and she is starting her puberty, right? And so even like this meeting in the middle that we're having right now, where I look at her and it's like, oh, she's having all these crazy mood swings. And it's like, well, here's my mirror, right? Like I'm having those too. Or she's like, a lot of talk about periods. And here I am having a lot of talk about periods. So we actually have some common ground versus differences as well.
That you have my mind thinking. It might be an episode. Let's talk about andropause, because you're right. That is something that it's there, but no one talks about it. And I think it could be a couple of things. One, a lot of people don't know. And then two, sometimes for some people who do know, especially for women, there's a lot of shame when it comes to talking about these symptoms and what we're going through, especially to men or other people that may not understand. And so we look for these communities that we can relate to. How would you, or what would you suggest, I would say, what advice would you give to women who are struggling to have these conversations? How can they remove the shame and the fear around talking about this with a spouse or a partner or a loved one? I know it's also something, and I'm probably throwing in a twofold question. I also know that it's something that when it comes to the workplace, it's not, a lot of women don't want to really share because, of course, we get in our midlife and we're already dealing with ageism and other things. And then, of course, women, we deal with also other things in corporate America. And so this is just another thing that we want to just kind of keep to ourselves and we don't want to share so that we're not treated differently. What advice would you give women who are still struggling with that shame and they fear about having these conversations with a spouse or a partner?
Yeah. I think the first one that comes to mind is just, like the talking to yourself, the talking to your girlfriends, the talking to your spouses, right? It's almost as if like there's just levels of awareness, right? Where you're like, okay, you have your own mental self-talk, right? And then you have your heart talk, and you have your relational talk, how you work with other people, and then physical self, right? And so like to change these at different levels, and at what level is this resonating with? And I think a big one is, using a lot of I statements, right? Like not instance, it's just like the 101, right? Like going back to saying like, I'm feeling, or, I'm feeling unsupported, or I'm feeling confused, or I'm feeling stressed, or I'm noticing. How are you noticing these things too? And being able to use your spouse or your partner as a mirror, right? And saying like, in the future, like if you're noticing, like I just went through some of this recently with I was feeling a little bit down, right? Where I was like a little depressed, and I was like, is this like just a normal mood swing? Is this something bigger that I should be taking a look at? And my husband, of course, as he always does, is like, oh, it's just PMS, or oh, it's just your time of the month. It's just like very dismissive, right? And so it was a bigger opening where it was lasting more like 3 weeks, right? Not just a couple days. And so started to kind of invite him to the conversation, like, hey, this is what was happening for me during that time when I came out of it. And I would love for you to be able to be like a mirror to me of saying like, hey, I'm noticing that this is happening. And, what has pulled you out of it in the past? Like maybe it's, time in nature, going for a walk, or just like a little bit more self-care, right? Like that's my theme for the year is just self-care. And it's like, hey, take a minute and like just maybe go to the movies by yourself, or go get your nails done, or do something good for yourself, because you do so much for so many people and for our family and for each other. And so just to kind of invite them to notice it with you, I think is a big one, versus saying like, you always criticize me. You always say it's my time of the month. You always say X, Y, Z, right? So just trying to have it more of an inviting and enrolling conversation.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that because it brings my mind back to like having this self-awareness with your emotions, and of course, in our case, these mood swings that we're dealing with, and then being able to, sit in that, understand what it is, but also communicating that with your partner so that you can have that support that you need, and taking care of yourself at the same time. Because if you're able to like say, I know this is what's going on, I'm having the mood swing, as you mentioned. In this case, I'm dealing with a little bit of depression right now, and I did something to take care of myself, and this is what helped me, feel better. You're able to communicate that better with your partner.
And the reinforcement, like, thank you for that space. I feel so much better. You were such a great support for me in that moment. And then they feel like, oh, I'm a hero.
They do. And I really like that. And especially with the I statements, that is something that is very important, because you're right. We're going through this time and we're trying to navigate it, and our emotions can be all over the place. But we also have to really just kind of take a step back and reflect and say, this is how I feel when this is happening or that is happening, or when I'm going through this is what's going on with me. And we have to find a way to communicate that with our partners or with friends or with whoever is in our life that we can trust that information with. And so I will say you're just giving me so many just ideas about, different things that we really need to expand on, especially on this podcast, one being communication. And so hopefully I can do an episode on that soon, is how to properly communicate with your partner while you're navigating this journey of perimenopause and menopause during this time, because emotions are high. and your partner may be wondering what is happening to her. And we got to know how to communicate that, because we don't want it to impact the relationships that we have in our lives. Before we wrap up here, I want to kind of circle back a little bit, and I want to really understand, how did your personal journey influence the way you approach the work that you're doing with your platform, Hot or Just Me? Let's take a moment to talk about skincare that truly cares for your skin. Banish is a skincare brand known for creating clean, cruelty-free, and vegan products that help tackle acne scars, hyperpigmentation, and uneven skin texture. As we go through perimenopause and menopause, we often notice increased dryness and changes in our skin texture. That's why I love hydrating products like Banish's Brightening Vitamin C Moisturizer, which deeply nourishes and restores your skin's glow, and the Pumpkin Enzyme Mask, a gentle exfoliating treatment that leaves your skin feeling fresh, smooth, and radiant. Banish products are made without harmful chemicals, artificial fragrances, or dyes, so you can feel confident about what you're putting on your skin. Save $5 off any order by using my code LIFEAFTER40, that's LIFEAFTER40 at checkout. You can visit www.banish.com to start your journey to healthier, more radiant skin today.
I think it's everything. I kind of, I'm a fighter. I'm a child of immigrants. You know, we grew up really poor. My parents didn't speak the language. We didn't have any money. So it's just very much of like, you know, you fight for what you believe in. And that's just been kind of like a common ground through my life of just, you know, just keep trying and, you know, don't be afraid of getting rejected and saying and getting no's, right? Like when I started my business, I remember I was rejected 81 times before I finally found the right partner to get started. And that was over the course of years. But like, I just took every no as a checkpoint of like, I still believe in this. I still really want to do this. And what's happening very much now, right? Where this is kind of a first of its kind business. And, you know, like we talked about imposter syndrome earlier in our conversation, that's very real for me. You know, is this something that it needs to exist? Should it exist? And you start to question, well, if it should, then how come it hasn't been done before? And then I'm thinking, well, okay, well, I'm not afraid to be the first one. So let's just try this out. And, you know, if I can help women along the way, even better. And help support women as well. So I've always found a social cause as well. So with my previous business, we supported minority entrepreneurs, and I'm really proud that we set up a grant program that has donated to date over $350,000 to help support women of color, minority entrepreneurs, people from the LGBTQIA plus community start and run their businesses, as well as personal mentorship from me. And then now with Hot or Just Me, we'll be giving a percentage of our profits to period.org, which helps support women get menstrual products that they need to help, you know, basically carry on with their lives and get education and being able to not have that a limiting factor in their success.
Yes, I love that. I love what you're doing, and I love your journey that you shared with us today. I have done my own research on you, and I just felt like what I learned so far has been truly inspiring. And for myself, I know when I started navigating life after 40, I had this vision. And so I knew where I wanted this to go and how I wanted it to grow. And hearing you talk today has really inspired me to continue educating women and providing resources to women, and also these safe spaces for women to learn more about just important topics that impact us, especially when it relates to perimenopause and menopause. And to hear you talk about getting the 81 no's before you got that one yes, it makes me think about all of the women out here who are going to the doctors and they're constantly not getting the help and the support that they need. Eventually, for most of them, they somehow land on that one yes. And that one yes, or in this case, that level of support that they finally receive, it's just life-changing. And so I appreciate you sharing your story with us and your journey. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing to inspire women, entrepreneurs, the LGBTQ plus community, and so much more. I know it's great. And again, I am truly inspired by you.
I really am.
Thank you, Roni. Likewise, the feeling is mutual. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I love all the light that you shine for people in our midlife as we transition to this awesome stage in life.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate knowing that this podcast has been helpful and an inspiration to so many women. So I really appreciate you sharing that compliment with me. If there is one message or takeaway you hope every woman gets from engaging with what you've created with Hot or Just Me, what would that message be?
I'll say it 3 times because it's this important. It's self-care, self-care, self-care.
I love it.
That silly thing when they say, like, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can take care of other people. And it's so true. It's just, when your well is dry and you've got nothing left to give, it's hard to be creative, to be thoughtful, to be insightful, to be inspirational. Like all the things that we want to be, we can't be unless we've taken good care of ourselves. And whatever that means for you, right? Is that a good night's sleep? Is that time with your friends? Is that, just a night off? Is it a good book? Like, just find what that means to you and really just put the time in your calendar to make it happen.
I love that. Self-care, practicing self-care and putting yourself first. And I always tell people that self-care isn't selfish and that you also can't pour from an empty cup. If you can just give yourself 1 hour a day, just something for you to care for yourself and refill your cup, you'll feel so much better and you'll be shocked at just really what you can accomplish and how good you'll feel just taking care of yourself. So thank you for that reminder for us all to remember to practice self-care. And also thank you for being here today and talking with us about your journey, about your site, Hot or Just Me. I am going to get one of those bracelets. I'm really determined to get a bracelet. They are very cute. I'm like, they're so cute. So I have to get one. And I will also, for all of you who are watching or listening, I will also have the link to that website along with a special code for you to save 10% off your first purchase at checkout. So be on the lookout for that in the show notes. Lastly, if you could speak directly to a woman just starting her perimenopause journey, what would you tell her?
Yeah, just that you are not alone. We have a wonderful community here, and you have a community within your own world of girlfriends and hopefully medical providers and practitioners that can help support you along the way.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I agree. You are not on this journey alone. And I always like to say that we are figuring it out together. I know I'm still figuring it out, which is the whole purpose of me starting this podcast, because I was just like, what is happening to me? And I was not getting any answers. And eventually I started this podcast and my Facebook community so that we can all figure it out together. And I bring on amazing guests like Carin and other women as well so that they can share their stories and education about what they're doing to navigate this journey in midlife. So thank you guys for listening again. Thank you for watching if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you, Carin, for being here. I hope you all got something out of this episode that can really support you on your journey. I know that I did. And until next time, I will see you all later. Have a great one. That's a wrap for this episode of Navigating Life After 40. I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. If you love what you're hearing, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps me to reach more amazing women like yourself who are trying to navigate this amazing life. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep living your best life.